Hey, brand builder, Rory Vaden here. Thank you so much for taking the time to check out this interview. As always, it's our honor to provide it to you for free. And wanted to let you know there's no big sales pitch or anything coming at the end. However, if you are someone who is looking to build and monetize your personal brand, we would love to talk to you and get to know you a little bit and hear about some of your dreams and visions and share with you a little bit about what we're up to see if we might be a fit. So if you're interested in a free strategy call with someone from our team, we would love to hear from you. You can do that at brandbuildersgroup.com/podcall, brandbuildersgroup.com/podcall. We hope to talk to you soon.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode on the influential personal brand. I'm so excited to get to introduce you guys to my friend Andy Bailey today. Before I give you a formal introduction to Andy, there are two things that I think is really important for everyone to know who's tuning in. Is one, as you guys know, since you listen to this podcast, we serve the expert community, coaches, consultants, trainers, speakers, authors, or any of you who want to be one of those things. And a huge part of what we're going to talk about today is how to scale your coaching practice, right? But we're going to talk about the business components, the personal components, the leadership parts, the sales parts. And so if that is you and that sounds appealing, then this is probably an episode you want to stick around and listen to. The second thing that you need to know is how I met Andy Bailey, which now would be, I don't know, 14, 15 years ago.
Right after you moved to Nashville.
I mean, it was like within months, and we got connected through a mutual acquaintance. But I remember coming to your office, and I was working at our former company, and I met you there, and I still have it, and it's sitting on my son's shelf, and you gave out this little Yoda, these little bobblehead Yodas. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Hundreds and hundreds of those things we've given out, but yeah.
I still have it.
Do you really?
I should have brought it up here as proof that I still have it. But it's
yeah.
And I carried around, I have carried around that to two companies, several offices, a new house, and it has made its way onto the shelf of both of my son's study room. And, for years, people would come into my office and they would say, "Are you into Star Wars?" And I'd be like, "No, I've never seen it." And they're like, "Why do you have a Yoda?" And I'm like, "Oh, well, I'm going to tell you this great story about this person I met named Andy Bailey, who did not give me something with his logo on it, but gave me something that now makes me tell his story everywhere I go." So I have used that on stages, on podcast interviews, and you may not know it, but I talk about that little Yoda and meeting you all the time.
Well, I need to get a bigger stash of Yodas to start handing out if that's going to be the outcome.
And I still have that little sucker. So I just think that's really important because so many of us are trying to figure out, in a world that's really noisy, how do you stand out and how do you be memorable? And sometimes it's the personal things about yourself that stick with people the most. And I don't get to see Andy a whole bunch. He now lives in Colorado, but I still have your Yoda on my shelf. And so I don't see you all the time, but I think about you every single time I walk by that little Yoda. So again, for those of you who are tuning in, I'll give a quick formal intro of Andy, but this is just one of those things. It's like we're all trying to figure out, how do we grow in business? How do we scale? How do we get people to know about what we do so they can buy our products and services? And often we skip past the simplest of things, which is just help people get to know you. Be memorable by just being you, which is exactly what Andy did for me 15 years ago. And now you're on this show. So now let me formally introduce you and we'll get down to business. But Andy Bailey is the founder of two awesome companies, Petra Coach, which we'll talk about, and his newest company that we'll also talk about called Boundless. But he helps businesses scale to the point of selling or scale to just the point of healthy profitability. He helps so many people that I personally know with their leadership teams, their sales teams, their executive team. He's a serial entrepreneur. He and I are part of the same EO group here in Nashville, the Entrepreneurs Organization. He is a speaker and a constant adventurer. So without further ado, Andy, welcome to the show.
Wow, AJ, thanks for that introduction. There's a lot in there for sure. We've been an EO member since 1997. When I speak to those groups, I always kind of weave that in, and I'll say, "Is anybody older than me in the?" Like nobody in the world has been a member longer than 97. I'm sure there's a few, but there are few and far between.
Oh, that's so funny. I think I just hired 2 new people, and on both of their, I'm like filling out payroll yesterday, and both of them were like born in 2000. And it was like, how old am I? What do you mean you're born in 2000? So when you said 1997, it's like, I'm like, I was just filling these out yesterday going, 2000, how old are you? I'm like doing the math, and it's like, oh my gosh, you're babies. Well, I'm so excited to have you on the show. One, because I know you personally. I know that you've got such a breadth of wisdom of not just in business, but in this really awesome niche business that we happen to be in, which is in the coaching world, right? It's like you have built an enormously successful coaching business that helps other people build their businesses. So there's so much dual benefit of the conversation that we're going to have today. And so I'm going to start super broad. And I'm just like, whatever wisdom you have to get, I'm going to take this personally as like my free coaching hour with Andy, because you're real expensive. But for everybody else is going to get some benefit too. So here's my first question. If you had to nail it down to like the top 1 to 3 things that you think business owners need to do today to grow and scale, what would they be?
That's pretty easy. So I think in this order of importance, and this is never a popular answer because I've given this answer at colleges and at talks before, and everybody wants me to say stuff like, find something you're passionate about, or define your purpose, and put a big, all that stuff is great. But first and foremost, it has to be profitable. If a business doesn't generate a level of profitability, it can't fulfill purpose. It can't take care of others. It can't fulfill a mission. None of that stuff matters. I'm not saying one's more important than the other, but if you don't have the money, you can't run the business.
Yeah.
And I watch it happen quite a bit. So profitability would be at the very top of the list, making sure that that's in check. We were talking about people earlier. You have to, and we see this in EO quite a bit. Now, I have the fortunate, I get to go talk to a lot of EO and business people in big groups and big crowds. And usually leadership or the leader themselves, they invest in their own personal growth, but they don't do the same for their team members. If you take a general business, it's about $5 or $10 million in revenue. And if you took their P&L and just looked at what is the education line or the learning line, the majority of that's going to be tilted towards the owner of the business, the entrepreneur themselves. And then it just goes right down the scale all the way to the front line. So we've got to make sure that we're investing to grow our people. Sometimes I'll speak to it as, if a business is growing at 20% a year, everybody in the business has to grow at 20% a year. They have to build additional capacity. Capacity can be knowledge or skills or, feeling better, whatever it might look like. But we have to make sure that we're investing in the people. So profitability, focusing on the growth of the individual. And then I think they got to get really good at sales and marketing. You can have a lot of really screwed up shit in your operations side. And that stuff's a little bit easy to fix. But if you don't have anything coming in the front of the house, it's hard to work on the back of the house. Making sure that what you build, the engine you build, is a profitable engine, making sure that you're growing your people at a pace that you're growing your business. And then making sure that you have a way to go get people in the door to buy or to sell your services or your product to.
Those are good. And I have a question for each one of these, because I think these are, one, just sound business, sound business principles that we often neglect in the sake of do what you want to do. And, and that's also important, but those should those should a little bit be you should do what makes you happy. But at the end of the day, it also has to work, right? And working means it's profitable. So if you, generally speaking, had to just give anyone who's like their businesses could be, maybe they're a speaker, maybe they're an attorney, maybe they're a dentist, maybe they're a coach, or anything in between, right? But it's like, if there were just a couple of simple keys of going, like, this is just basic business 101 when it comes to getting profitable? What do people need to know?
Be good. That's the answer to your question.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's,
Now,
yeah. Actually, do what you say you do, right?
Yeah. Well, we have some rules in business. One of them is do what you say you're going to do. Be on time every time. Finish what you start, and say please and thank you. Like, that's 4 rules in business that everybody should be following. Your competition doesn't do that. It's easy to outpace your competition if you do those 4 things. But what I'm saying about being good is, if I stack up everybody else that does what I do, and people are going to pick me. Sounds like an arrogant statement, but people are going to pick me out of that lineup 9 out of 10 times. I've literally spent 1,000 days in rooms with teams. Like, let that sink in for a second. 1,000 8 to 10 hour days working with teams of people over the last decade, plus all the prep work, plus all the reading, the 300 books that went into it. I'm good at what I do. I'm really good at what I do. That means I don't have to go market myself all that much or go sell myself all that much. It means I can be more profitable. It means I can do all the things in business that I want to go do. Now, my job now, because of the scale of Petra, is to get other people to be good, which is a whole nother challenge. And that's what I'm working on. But the answer to the question is, if I could give you one piece of advice, go be good at what you do.
Yeah.
Really be good.
I love that. What I wrote down for myself is be so good at what you do that you're the only option, right? It's like you so outpace everyone around you that you are the only option because you're so good at it.
That's right.
That's
whatever
good.
it is your chosen field, if it's writing or speaking or coaching, especially your audience, probably a lot of solo entrepreneurs or solopreneurs, they have to, they probably spend a lot of their time in, is my website right? Is my business card right? Do I have my thing put together? Is the cover of all that stuff is good, and you got to do that. But if you're not delivering at the point of delivery to a level better than everybody else, it's not going to matter that much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's interesting. We talk about this all the time at Brand Builders Group, is that people often want to skip what we would call the fundamentals of building your personal brand, which is, ultimately, what problem do you solve? What's the unique way in which you solve it? Who do you solve it for? And how do you make money solving it? That's step 1. Step 2 is, what do you have to say that forwards the conversation? So it's developing your true thought leadership. And then number 3 is, then how do you want to say that, right? That's the artistry of our content, the artistry of our body of work. And what I find so often is people want to skip all of that and they want to have a pretty website, right? Because there's this tangible, pretty thing that's like, look how pretty this is. Or they want to jump straight to social media, or they want to, they want to do all the things that make it look like something versus having, back to what you say, it's like, make your content so good, you don't have to market it. Right. And it's like, that's hard and it takes time and a lot of effort.
That time piece is probably the one that's most difficult, especially in our time now. Everything is instant. You have an entire generation that grew up on everything is at my fingertips. If I want something, I just push a button, the car comes, picks me up, takes me where, like, all that stuff is instant. There's no real concept of time. And you've heard the statement, everybody probably has heard every success, overnight success is a 25-year journey.
Always.
Right? Petra is now 12 years old. I mean, that's a decade-long business journey. And if you look at it, you go, man, these guys are doing great. Well, shit, we weren't doing great 12 years ago. We were charging nothing and working our asses off and, screwing a bunch of stuff up, but learning along the way. But we built on a little bit of success and then built on a little bit more and built on a little bit more. And we didn't stop being good. And we kept looking for what's the next good. And we still do that today.
Yeah. And that kind of leads into the second thing that you said, which is be growing as yourself, the leader, right? The entrepreneur, the business owner, but also have your team grow. And so do you have any just kind of like tips or, best practices, rules of thumb, whatever we want to call it, of how much do you invest in your team, right? Like what's a good budget policy? Do you let them pick? Do you pick? Like, what's a good practice?
I don't think there's an answer to what was not a universal answer. If you're, 10% of gross margin should get, like, that stuff probably doesn't exist because everybody needs something in a little different degree. But certainly if you're running an organization that has people in it other than you should be working with the individuals to figure out where are their gaps. What is the place, not weaknesses, but gaps.
Mm-hmm.
What do they need in order to, if your business, I said this to you earlier before we got on, but if the business is growing at 20% a year, that's 60% over a 3-year period. Every person around the table had better be 60% better, stronger, faster, smarter, all the stuff. Or when you reach that place, you're going to hit a ceiling and not be able to grow past it, or you're going to experience a lot of chaos and pain, right? So what do you have to do? And sometimes that's people skills. Like, Jimmy, I need to teach you how to actually deal with people. And sometimes that's knowledge. And, I need to learn how to code something, right? It depends on the position and what the outcome is. But if we wait until it's too late, then it's too much to grasp. If you wait till you're 40 pounds overweight and you start working out, it's really difficult. If you start doing it now while you can keep it in check, kind of thing. So small bite-sized pieces, but the key is to sit down with team members and find out, what are we doing to grow you? Mm-hmm. Not what are you doing to grow the business, but what are we doing to grow you? And it doesn't have to be like 50% of the person's time or 5% of the person's time. These small things, if we do it on a regular basis.
That's
but
good.
The company just don't focus on it.
That's good. But that's the whole concept. I remember hearing this years ago. It's like, if you grow, the business will grow. Right. So it's like, it's like businesses are just a collection of the people, right? And their experience, skills, knowledge, right? It's like businesses don't exist without humans. Some human has to be there. So it's like, where are you growing? And as long as you're growing, the business will likely follow you in some capacity. All right. And then the third thing, sales and marketing, which you kind of referenced this a little bit. It's like, man, if you're so good that you're the only option, kind of sell yourself. But in a world where it's easy to compare your step 1 to someone else's step 1,000, or your year 1 to someone else's year 12. And when you get in a world that's so noisy with distraction of, we've got this growth funnel, and we've got this email thing, and we've got this new website thing, and you've got all things digital that are real distracting, and surprise, they actually cost a lot of money and also take a lot of time. What would you say are the 1 to 2 things? It's like, just pause for a minute. If you really want to grow sales, this is what you need to do. What would you say?
Ask for the sale. I mean, most people we don't get nobody, you don't get a date unless you ask for a date. Like, they don't just show up. I mean, maybe they do these days, but typically you have to ask in some form or fashion. We hide behind a bunch of shit that doesn't put us face to face with people. Mm-hmm. So you're wanting to get an engagement, sell a book, sell a case of books, book a speaking thing, and you're talking to somebody, ask them for the sale. Hey, are we ready to do this? We ready to get this on? Whatever it is you got to say. And I explain it like this to salespeople, my own salespeople included. Before that moment in time, you didn't have anything. Nothing. You didn't have the sale. You did not have the sale. You had 0. So you got no risk in it already. Mm-hmm. Take the risk. And the second thing would be pricing. Most of the people that I'm making some assumptions here, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I would venture to guess that most of the people that you work with are way undercharging for the services that they provide.
Way undercharging. Let me make sure you heard that. Way undercharging, most of you.
Yeah. And I find that even in business, especially in small business, and it's one of the hardest things we do. Like, we coach 10 million to $1 billion companies now, but anytime that we go into an organization and we do a financial review, and we have we call them levers, we can pull these levers. One of the levers is increase in price. And you would have thought I just shot somebody's dog in a room and made them watch when we start talking about, we're going to have to do a 3% increase in price. Well, shit, the market and paper costs 17% more. Gas is 40% increased. Freight to bring the stuff to the warehouse went up by 70% last quarter. What do you mean you're freaked out about passing along this percentage increase to the customer? Well, I'm going to go tell them it's a price increase. Everybody's got a price increase. Mm-hmm. And most of the services that we offer have value on the other side of it. And I think what we get tangled up in is our own minds of, well, it's just me on the stage for an hour, or, it's just the written word, that my creativity shouldn't cost all that kind of much. But what you're bringing to the table is not what you're doing in that room or what you wrote on that page. It's the 18 years of experience or 5 years of experience, or the thing that you lived through that was pure hell. And now you're going to go tell the story. That's the thing. That's the value. Now you put in the work for 18 years, 8 months, 3 days, whatever your story might be. That's what you need to get paid for.
Mm-hmm.
So I tell businesses a lot, especially little ones. I remember we have a mutual friend in Nashville. I won't mention her name, but she is in the wedding business. Okay. And the first time I met her, she asked me if I would have a business, could I help her with her thing? And it was probably her and like one other person. And the first thing I told her was double your prices. Don't even talk to me anymore. Go back to your office and double your prices. Now, I didn't talk to her for a while, and she came and found me one day and said, I did exactly what you told me to do.
Totally
And I doubled my business, not just my number, doubled my business in the first year. So those two things, ask and charge more.
Yeah, that's so good. It's so funny because I know exactly who you're talking about. And not only did she double her business, she had a wait list. She had a wait list of people who wanted her services to do their, very at that point, high-end weddings. And it did double her business, and then had a wait list. Because I think a part of that is, I think what I have found anyways in a lot of programs out there is if you don't have confidence in your own pricing, the consumer base has just a lack of confidence in what it is. And it's like, it's only this amount of money. It can't be that good. It's like we even associate pricing with quality, which is often not true, right? And I think the great analogy to that is a book, right? It's like, I think books are one of the most undervalued and most important things in the whole world, because it's like, you think about how much I prepared, no offense, Andy, for this podcast, and it was like 10 minutes. But you think about how much I would prepare for a blog. I don't know, maybe it's 20 minutes, but how much time I take to prepare for a book is years, right? The amount of editing and distilling and back and forth. And it's what, $24.99 to buy a book?
Yeah.
Right?
We don't make books. I got a couple of them myself.
And it's like, but it's like, I think we go, oh, well, but right. Somehow it's like, if I want to coach with Andy, it's going to cost me $20,000, right? It's like, or I could read his freaking book. Right. And it's not that they're clearly different, but a lot of times we just undervalue things because they are underpriced. And it's like, when you get it priced right, you attract the right audience. And I see that happen with our clients all the time. They're not attracting their right audience because they're not priced right. They're attracting an audience that actually is the opposite of what they're looking for based on pricing.
Well, and they want volume too. They're they won't buy it at that. Everybody else is charging $99. If I charge more than $99, they won't buy it. Well, everybody's buying the other person's shit. Now it's like, do you want all of those? Because you got to go do the work that represents all of those. If you tripled the price and you got 1/3 the amount, you're actually better because you're working 1/3 as often for the same money. Like, right. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, we've got, in our organization, Petra today, we've gone from, I remember the day that we went to $2,500 a month was our standard fee for coaching. We have companies today that are $25,000 a month. Mm-hmm. Same person, exact same person, pretty much the same process, evolved over the course of time a little bit, but pretty much the same process. A lot more knowledge, decade of knowledge in the room, but from 2,500 to 25,000, I'll go see somebody for 2 days. Every 3 months, they pay me $75,000 for 2 days. And I go get it. I feel like I do a good job. We have good results. They make another $100 million at the end of the year. Everybody's happy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of back to, it's like, people don't pay for time. They pay for experience. That's and right. Your ability to consolidate that into super easy to, to comprehend strategies and principles that my team can then go and deploy, right? That's what we're paying for. So kind of on that note, you mentioned Petra, which you have scaled to a very healthy 8-figure coaching business over the last decade. So if we were to just take a moment and narrow in a little bit of not general practice, but like scaling a coaching business, like what does it take? What do you need to know? And how do you do it? What do you got for us?
Well, I should probably write that book, because a lot of people want to know that. What I did in the very beginning, when it was just me, was I went to some kind of thought leader gurus that are around the coaching world. And I started asking the question, because this is what I do, and I teach other people to do the same thing. If I want to achieve something, go find somebody who's already done it and just ask them how they did it. You're asking me now. So I went to 2 or 3 people who were kind of kings of the methodology, and just said, I would like to. My history comes from recurring revenue, so I learned the recurring revenue thing back in my 20s. So I did not want to just trade my time for money for the rest of my life. I wanted to make sure I built something that returned revenue without me doing it. Backing the story up. So I asked a few people, and they said, I don't really know of anybody that took a methodology and that they would deliver to a group of people and turned it into a practice with. So I had to figure that piece out on my own. Extremely difficult, more difficult. And I started a software company, Align, as you're familiar with. It's in New Orleans, has 25 or 30 employees, does great down there. We've got a marketing company as well, in the Petra and Boundless. So I started these kind of traditional businesses alongside this coaching practice after having a traditional business for 18 years prior to that and exiting it. Coaching practice, factor of 10, more difficult to scale. Factor of 10. It's an incredibly difficult thing. So how did I do it? A little bit at a time. So we made some mistakes early. We got some wrong people in the seats out of necessity. I learned that lesson really quick, meaning there was so much business coming in the door that I just really needed the relief. So I put a couple of coaches in place who were not good at what they do. They weren't any remotely near good, and turned them loose on these people who quickly ran away from them. So I had to kind of back that up. So I learned, well, exactly what am I looking for in a coach? I didn't really know. I like intuitively know. So defined exactly to the letter what that looked like. And we are incredibly intense on anybody who wants to work inside of the organization as a coach today. They have to go through, we call it a gauntlet. I talked to a guy today, and he wanted to be a coach. I said, look, man, we're like the Navy SEALs. We take the best of the best in the world and we put them through hell. And if you make it through hell, then maybe we'll invite you in. You got to be ready for that kind of thing. So some people are attracted to that process. Some people are repelled by it. There's a reason that exists. And then again, it's when you first got someone in. So I go get another coach, we bring them back in. There's a period of time and it's usually somewhere between 12 and 24 months. They go through a training process, and then day one in the room with the client, they completely fall apart. Like they forget all their training, what they're supposed to say, what the next steps are, what page to turn, like forget absolutely everything. So they screw up for about a year to 2 years. And we call it burning members. We call our clients members because we know we are putting companies in there. Now they're getting value, more value than they would get from the open market, but not nearly the value that they're going to get if they came to this person when they were 2 years in. You with me? We charge less for it. We're very open and straightforward. They get a lot of time with the coach, but the coach's abilities aren't developed yet. We've learned that recruiting the right people is incredibly important. Making sure that we do not compromise on that no matter what the circumstance is. And then training and retraining and training and retraining as we go down this path, and nothing replaces experience. We can do all the online training, all the shadowing, all the books, everything. But as your speakers on this absolutely understand, you're not as good. I don't care what you know from stage the 50th time as you are going to be the 500th time. Experience is the best teacher.
Yeah, it's so funny. One of our early mentors, when my husband Rory was competing for the World Championship of Public Speakers, we remember this so clearly. And Eric Chester is the one who told us this. He said, the only difference between a good speaker and a great speaker is 1,000 speeches. I said, go give this presentation 1,000 times. And I promise you, it'll be great.
Yep.
And that's what he did. That is literally what my crazy husband did. In the back of a Denny's to 2 people, to any school or free club that would have him. And that first 12 months when he was competing, he did that speech probably 340 times. And that's once a day, y'all. Like, there's only 365 days in the year. And out of 25,000 contestants, he came in second. Right? What he says, he's the #1 loser. But it's like, but it's like, man, he's doing it every single day. You think about that. It's like, you do anything every single day, over time, you're just going to get better.
You have no choice. But most people will not go do that. And we talked a little bit prior about, just the societal viewpoint today is give me that now, I deserve it.
Mm-hmm.
No, you don't. You haven't done it 100 times or 340 times or 1,000 times. You don't deserve it. You're not going to be good or great until you go put in the work. And that the work part is the part that most people won't go do. Only a few, and those few will exceed and show up, and they'll get the brass ring or the golden ring or whatever it is that they're chasing.
Yeah, I think that's just a good reminder to all of us. And even like starting Brain Builders Group, like we turn 5 years old in just a couple of weeks. And
Yes.
it feels like yesterday, right? But we were building our first coaching company for 12 years. And, the thing that I've learned is like, the more that you do something, the quicker you can redo it and make it better. But, it's like we stepped into building Brain Builders Groups constantly frustrated of like, why isn't this working fast enough? Right. And it's like, but you look up one day and you're like, oh, that's because it's like, again, I have so much to learn in the patience category, but it's like, and it takes time to build anything good, takes time. And if you rush it, you're going to cut corners and you're going to skip things that are crucial to the foundation. And I know from our community and from people listening, it's like, man, you want it to work so bad and you want it to work so fast that you're often tempted to just skip steps. But it's like, you're always going to have to repeat those steps at some point.
And everybody's looking for a silver bullet. Like, can I use a piece of technology? Can I use no, you can use it, but you're not getting a skill from it. So.
Yeah, that's good. So I think one of the things too, because you have done this, how many coaches do you have at Petra?
There's about 20, 25, 26, something like that.
That's a lot. That's a ton. So if you were to give any tips, and I know we only have a couple of minutes left here, but if you were to give any tips for people going, great, Andy, I have to go hire people. Like, where do I find good talent? Like, how do I find, attract, train, and keep good talent? What are your tips?
First of all, it's a decision process. And I've had this conversation, especially when somebody, I'll use an example. Been working with the company now for a while, like a decade, And when they first approached me, highly successful, highly profitable, just a few people, kind of run like a fraternity house. And they were in the sales business and they all made great money. I mean, like millions a year. Right. So, but he wanted a business. He's like, I feel like I need a business. I want to scale this thing. I want to turn it into an actual business. I know it's just a job right now and it's a good job, but an actual business. I'm like, are you sure, dude? Like, you need to be sure. And there's nothing wrong with solopreneur, lifestyle business, staying small and being great. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, because it takes an enormous amount of energy to scale something beyond yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Get a group of people to look, smell, and act the way you want them to look, smell, and act on a regular basis is not an undertaking for the lighthearted. So the first is be very cautious with even the decision, because we glorify business people. We put them on magazines to talk about their organization. It's a 10,000 person group or 100,000 person group or whatever. But the glory is the end result. What they don't see are the years of the pain to get there. So the first point of that is be cautious of making that decision in the first place. The second piece is you're going to lose money before you make money. So if you're making $2 million a year doing what you're doing today as a solopreneur, you probably are going to get to a place where you make $500,000 in the first 3 years of your little venture off into being a business, because now you're paying other people to do the stuff 30% as well as you were doing it until they can get up to the 100% where you want them to be. And you got to be willing to suck that up for a period of time in order to get scale on the other side, right? So it's going to cost you not just effort and energy and time, but a lot of money to go build something like that as well. So at the end of the day, just be cautious with the decision itself.
Yeah, I think it's actually really wise and sage advice, because I think we often get so tempted where we think we have to scale. We think we have to grow. And the truth is, you don't have to. You don't.
I'm at a place right now with Petra where we had a half a day meeting today. I mean, our business does really well. It makes really good money. I'm not that involved in it anymore. I built it so it could run on its own. That's what we do with other companies. Might as well do it on my own. So all of my businesses operate pretty much without me. But in order to go from where we are to the next level, the 25, it's going to take a lot of my time and attention. And I'm weighing in my mind, like, am I actually willing to go do that? Or am I okay where I am? And could I point my energy in another direction? So I'm making that decision personally while I'm telling you guys the exact same thing. You asked me about where to go look for great team members to be in the coaching. Right, put down the attributes, not the skill set.
That's good.
What are you looking for from an attribute standpoint before you look at the skill set? Skill sets can be taught. Attributes are innate, and they're just part of the being. So what are your core values of your business? What is the purpose of your business? What are the pure attributes that you're looking for in a human being to, I wrote an article years ago, AJ, called Sharing a Toilet Seat. It actually was in the Tennessean, if you remember that old
Yeah.
And it was about, I said, look, when you hire somebody, you're going to sit on the same toilet seat that they sit on. Don't you want to take just a little bit of time picking that person? Like, just like hiring somebody, right? And then it went into what can you do to slow this process down and be more, just more pointed with making your decision.
Yeah, I love that. I really love that. It's what can you do to slow the process down versus, how do I speed it up? And I think so often it's like, how do we make faster recruiting decisions and how do we expedite the onboarding? And it's actually, I really love the advice of like, no, slow it down. Right? It's like, don't make these hasty decisions. Know exactly who they are. Make sure they know who you are. And that, again, takes time. So slow it down.
You've had the experience. I'm making, again, another assumption, and I talk to a lot of business people. You know how difficult it is to get somebody out of your business once they've been there.
Oh, yeah. It's annoyingly difficult. And to do it where there's not going to create any sort of legal ramifications or everyone leaves on good terms and everyone's happy. It's like, it's a little bit like getting married and, for those who've been through this, getting divorced. It's often a lot easier to get married than it is divorced.
Super easy to get married. Super easy. Really difficult to break that thing up.
Yeah.
Same thing is true
and
here.
Painful for all the parties involved. So slow it down. I love that advice.
You wouldn't rush into a marriage. You would date for a while. You pick different people. You sit with them. You talk. Like, you learn shit about somebody before you make the commitment. Same thing is true here.
Yeah, I think that's so good. Andy, if people want to learn about Petra and what you do for businesses, and if somebody's in a state of like, I am scaling and I do need this kind of advice, where should they go to learn about Petra? Just go to
petracoach.com. We have some online tools and some downloads there. We also do some live events, virtual live events. May the 18th, I don't know if this comes out prior to May the 18th, but we do have a live event in Nashville that people are welcome to sign up. Most of the stuff is free as well.
That's awesome. And I'll put all that in the show notes. But then also you've got this awesome new company, boundless.me. And that's really more about the personal development side. And so can you give us your 30-second, tell us about Boundless and where people go to find out about it?
Yeah. So as we were talking about earlier, like growing the individual inside of the business, that was a missing component inside of Petra. It wasn't something that we could spend a lot of time with. So We started a business a couple of years ago that took the tools for growing an organization, a company, and we just turned those tools into tools for the individual. We call it high performance for high performing humans. So it's literally, think of it as life planning. Where are you going to be in your life? What do you want in 10 years? What do you want in a year? Very, very detailed. We created a journal system that goes along with it so you can write every day. And it's a process I've been following personally for 12 years. And I just turned it into this stuff. This has been a fun journey creating this.
And people can go to boundless.me to check out the more personal development side. And then also in the show notes, Andy's been so gracious. We're going to include an awesome QR code where you can just sign up for quick, easy little, snippets of information that'll come to you every day. And so that'll all be in the show notes, and I'll put all of the other links in there so that you guys can learn, stay in touch, and continue to get these awesome pieces of wisdom from my good friend, Andy Bailey. Andy, thank you so much for being here. I so appreciate you. And for everyone listening, make sure you stay tuned for the Cliff Notes version of this episode, which will release shortly after this. We'll see you next time on The Influential Personal Brand.